The Sharks have a lot of new names on the blue line. How do they sort this out in training camp?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of The Reef, my blog about the San Jose Sharks with a focus on Sharks prospects, as well as the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at the defensive battles heading into training camp, as the Sharks have potentially 4 new names on the blue line when it comes to opening night. So we're going to get to know who the players in here, who I think is got a good chance of maybe making the roster, who's got some work to do, how the Sam Dickinson factor can change everything, and how the Sharks might try to alleviate the logjam. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, I know this episode, right, with the Misa news coming out on, Wednesday. We had a Wednesday night episode for that. This episode kind of coming out a little bit later, Thursday morning here. I know we typically do things Thursday at night, but wanted to give the Misa episode some time to breathe, right? So doing things here a little bit. We'll have a normal episode, or your Friday episode will be out late Thursday night, normal time, where we will break down the Sharks, rookie face-off, all that fun stuff. So, but we spent a good chunk of this week looking at the different training camp battles, right? First day we looked at the top 6 battles and who's going to kind of get that last spot there. We looked at rookies who are going to be pushing for a spot. And then on Wednesday, we looked at kind of the bottom 6 and all the different names in there and how it can kind of work itself out. And today we're going to look at the blue line, and because there is a lot of names for not a lot of spots, right? The way Mike Grier aggressively tried to upgrade the blue line this year, which is something that was one of his goals, right? Coming out of after the season ended, one of the first things he said was we got to work on the blue line. We can't have as many goals going in the back of our net. This is an area of concern for us. So Mike Grier went out and he signed Dmitry Orlov to a 2-year deal at $6.5 million. He also signed John Klingberg to a 1-year deal at $4 million. Orlov has a full no trade clause this season, and then it opens up to a 15-team trade clause for next year. John Klingberg has a no trade clause until January 30th. And then it kicks into a 14-team no trade. So basically allows Klingberg to kind of stay here until the trade deadline, and then the Sharks can move him as well. They also acquired Nick Leddy off of waivers. Of course, Nick Leddy had a 16-team trade list. We're very much assuming the Sharks were on the no trade part of that list. But just like we saw last year with Barclay Goodrow, Leddy was placed on waivers. The Sharks had the first waiver claim, and they claimed Nick Leddy. So that's 3 new faces that you fully expect to be on this team, right? Because Mike Grier went out of his way to acquire these guys. Of course, you have returning players Mario Ferraro, who's entering the last year of his contract. Timothy Liljegren, who the Sharks acquired early last season from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Both these guys, actually basically everybody but Orlov is in the final year of their deals. You have Vincent Deronez, who the Sharks acquired at the trade deadline last year, who's entering, who's got $2 million on his deal. And then you have Shakir Mukhamadullin, who signed a 1-year deal at $1 million, and very much feels like a prove-it type of year for Mukhamadullin. And then finally, you have Jack Thompson, who's kind of expected to be, or Puckpedia has him on the roster, but is a player who is going to be fighting for a spot here. And then I would be remiss not to mention Luca Cagnoni, who played last season mostly in the AHL, got some NHL games as well, and is going to be a guy I think also pushing for a job here as well. And of course, the 11th overall pick from the 2024 draft, Sam Dickinson. We're going to spend more time talking about Dickinson in the second segment. So, like, yes, we'll get to the fireworks factory that is Sam Dickinson. I promise you. But you look at kind of all these guys here, right? You know, for sure, Letty, Klingberg, Orlov, 100% going to be on the opening night roster, right? You have Ferraro, Liljegren, you would expect, unless something happens. And then you have Mukama Dolan, who played very well. Like the Sharks believe in Mukama Dolan. They want Mukama Dolan to take a bigger role. They're, like we saw Mukama Dolan play very well for the Sharks before his injury last season. Had a little bit of an up and down year last year. But he's a guy that you expect to be on the Sharks roster. So we're at 6 right now. Before we get to Vinny Desharnais, who's a quality, 7th defenseman type of player. And then you have Jack Thompson, who showed some flashes last year and has split time between the AHL and the NHL and is probably at that point where, he needs to kind of play NHL games at a more consistent rate to continue his development. You're right there at 8 defensemen before we even get to Sam Dickinson and Luca Cagnoni. So there is a lot of guys kind of competing for these 6 spots, right? And again, right, like Orlov, Letty, Klingberg all feel like locks to play every night as long as they're healthy because, again, Mike Grier went out of his way to acquire these guys. And Ferraro has been, a staple for the Sharks over the, I think he's entering his 7th season now with San Jose. He's the longest tenured Shark at this point now that Vlasic has been bought out and is no longer with the team. And, Liljegren is, a right-handed defenseman, and the Sharks don't have a ton of those kind of, players those kind of puck-moving right-handed defensemen. Like, there's going to have to be some really tough decisions here on just who plays every night, right? Because, who are you taking out and who are you trying to put in? Because you can make valid cases for all these players here. Orlov's going to be probably the number 1 defenseman, and John Klingberg's going to most likely run the power play and is a right-handed shot. And the Sharks need, if they're trying to balance the lines a little bit, like Klingberg's going to get a fair amount of time. Letty, who's a left-handed guy, but can easily play both sides of the ice. And I know last year wasn't the greatest year for him, but was kind of coming off an injury and maybe rushed back a little bit too quickly. There's Mukama Dolan, who's a guy just like we talked about with Jack Thompson, who needs to be playing more and showed a lot last season in his limited time. I do think the Sharks are going to have to eventually make a decision here and potentially move somebody because you just got too many bodies here. And I don't know if you're going to be able to accommodate all these players. And yes, there's going to be attrition because of injuries and such, but that's just the way of life of the NHL is that players get injured, unfortunately, and you're not going to have all 6 or 7 guys for all 82 games, and having depth is nice, but I just think the Sharks have too many players, and that's even before we get to the Sam Dickinson of it all. So we're going to discuss kind of where Sam Dickinson fits, especially now that the Sharks have signed Michael Misa, how they're going to have to maybe potentially kind of work through this a little bit. And then we're going to kind of look at guys who might be on the outside looking in here. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Great thing about FanDuel is it makes it easy to play no matter what. If you like player props, maybe you just want to watch Josh Allen do cool Josh Allen things, that's a good way to go. If you build a same game parlay, where maybe you think a player is going to go off and that team's going to win and maybe blow another team out, something like that, or jumping into the live action as it unfolds, and maybe you believe, I don't know, the Vikings were going to come back and win on Monday Night Football. You can get in on the live betting and probably feeling pretty good this week. So if you're ready to start playing, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, guys, before we continue, of course, I want to thank you for making the Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. With training camp next week, we have rookie tournament starting this weekend. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And if you haven't started following on YouTube, now's the perfect time to subscribe. So again, wherever you're listening, subscribe on YouTube. So we're going to enjoy a really fun Shark season this year. So Sam Dickinson, right, the 11th overall pick in the 2024 draft, had himself a season last year in the OHL, right? Won the helped lead London to back-to-back OHL championships, regular season and postseason. So got that all taken care of. Helped lead them to a Memorial Cup win, was named the OHL Defenseman of the Year over like guys like Zane Parekh, was named the CHL Defenseman of the Year over guys, like every CHL defenseman. And Dickinson is a player who, we know unfortunately is kind of stuck in that AHL, but like that void of I can't play in the AHL because of my age. I can either play in the NHL or play in the OHL. Especially right now, we don't know the ruling on the potential, kind of applying the new CBA rule that would allow each team to pick one player to play in the AHL as a 19-year-old. And until we hear more, the assumption is this rule is probably not going to be put into effect until next year. But if it happens, like Sam Dickinson is the player that you pick because it makes the most sense. But Dickinson, is clearly too good to be playing in the OHL and needs to be challenged now. And, since he signed his ELC last year before all the rules changed with the NCAA, CHL, like we're in the Wild West right now, kind of trying to figure things out with some of these rules. Dickinson, unfortunately, he's stuck between he can either play in the NHL or he has to go back to the OHL. I'm still very much in the like Dickinson sticks around camp. Because I think the Sharks want Dickinson to succeed, and they want to put him in a position to succeed. And I think they want him to be around and be a professional hockey player, right? He's, gone on and said, he's put on about 5 pounds of muscle this offseason to try to get ready to play NHL games. He mentioned that before the rookie tournament when he met with reporters on Wednesday. And like Dickinson's also going to make this complicated because if you feel like Dickinson is going to stick around for the NHL the whole season, that's 9 guys. 9 guys you're trying to kind of get in. Remember, 6 can play, right? 23, you have 23-man roster. You have 12 forwards. Even if you just go the bare minimum of 12 forwards, 2 goalies, that puts you at 14 right there. Then you could, I guess, run 9 defensemen, right? But that gives you no flexibility with your forwards because if somebody gets hurt, like it just doesn't give you a lot of flexibility there. So like the Sharks ran a lot of 8 defensemen, where they would have 13 forwards and 8 defensemen, which is something you can do. And that's probably going to be the route that the Sharks take. But if Sam Dickinson is a guy that you want to keep around, somebody's going to be losing their job, right? And if you're keeping Sam Dickinson around, you're not keeping him around to hang out in the press box and eat hot dogs and watch the game. Like, you want him to play. And even if he's playing, only 15 minutes a night or something like that, which I kind of expect, especially early on, is to be very sheltered 15 minutes a night. You still want him to play and get experience, because the things Sam Dickinson needs to work on, which are, getting used to the NHL speed, quick, making sure his reaction time is quicker, kind of that processing time, all that stuff he has to work on by playing against faster, bigger, stronger competition that he's not going to get in the OHL. So if Dickinson's playing, you're losing at least one spot, where if that was your 7th defenseman, just to get Dickinson on the roster, or 7th or 8th defenseman, just to get Dickinson on your roster. And then you're losing potentially another spot where you're just a guy who would normally be playing every night is going to be losing his job because they want to get Sam Dickinson. And of course, the Sharks should want to get Sam Dickinson to play, because, Orlov, Leddy, Klingberg, none of these guys are going to be like long-term pieces, as those guys are all 33 and older. It's weird. Klingberg's the youngest out of all those guys. It's not by much, but still, it feels like Klingberg's been around the longest. But anyway, and then Ferraro and Liljegren are both UFAs after this season. You're probably going to have to make a decision on one, if not both of these guys, if you want to move off of them sooner rather than later, or if you want to keep them around. And the Sharks should try to keep at least one around, because, again, the Sharks have one defenseman under contract next year. And then you also have Muka Mandoulin and Jack Thompson, who both are young players who need to play to try to get better, right? So the Sharks are going to be in a really tough situation with Dickinson around. And even if this is just for the first 9 games and they're like, hey, Sam, you did a great job, but we feel like it's best for you to go back to the OHL. We want you to work on X, Y, and Z. Go have fun in London. See, we'll see you. We'll see you next fall, right? Fine. But still, that's a lot of roster juggling. And if the Sharks do decide to keep him all season, which is, again, I still think that's probably where they're leaning as of right now. At least that's the plan. And then if Dickinson just plays badly in the preseason and in his first 9 games, right, then you kind of your hands are tied that you have to send him back. But if he plays well, right, and very, very possible Sam Dickinson just plays well because he's a good player, right? You didn't pick him 11th overall, and he wasn't considered one of he was. Remember, Sam Dickinson was thought to be a top 6 or 7 pick in that draft, and he fell to the Sharks at 11. And Mike Grier, when I literally asked Mike Grier, did you think Dickinson was going to be there? And he said no. We didn't think Dickinson was going to be there at 11, even after they moved up from 14 to 11, right, to try to get whoever was left over in that those defensemen. They didn't think Dickinson was going to be there. So if Dickinson is here and you trying to kind of nurture this kid and going through a full season as a 19-year-old defenseman in the NHL, which is extremely hard. There's a reason why you don't see a lot of young defensemen like this in the NHL, because it's extremely hard, right? Because you can't shelter. It's harder to shelter them. It's not like, a forward where you can kind of put them out there for, and kind of hide them a little bit with their kind of usage and stuff. You can do that a little bit, but, if Dickinson makes a mistake, it's on Askarov or Nedeljkovic to try to fix it, right? If Will Smith or Michael Misa or whoever makes a mistake in the forward group, you still have a line of defensemen, right, who can hopefully kind of help cover some of those mistakes. If Dickinson makes a mistake, there's not a lot of help, right? You are the help, basically, with Dickinson. So it's going to be it's going to be very interesting to see how Mike Grier navigates this. Not Mike Grier and Ryan Warsofsky navigate this. So we're going to look at some potential options for the Sharks to try to kind of navigate this, and which players which players I'm kind of circling as like you may not be playing with you may not be playing in the NHL or with San Jose here pretty soon. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's their 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. And if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel control of your money without even touching a spreadsheet. It's like Puckpedia for you. And the great thing about it, too, is you can also, if maybe you and your partner have separate accounts, but you're working towards a joint, goals, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, or just planning for your next adventure. It's super easy to work together, but also keep your money separate as well. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, guys, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, go check out my Michael Misa episode, since you're going to have like 3 episodes in like a 36-hour period. For your second listen, though, also go check out Locked On NHL Podcasts. No off season, bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, so we got a lot of dudes here, right? And the nice thing is all these guys, with the exception of Orlov, are in the last year of their deals. So it's not like you're trying to, work off some complicated trades with guys. Like, this isn't the Erik Karlsson trade, where you're got a guy who's got 4 years left with $1 billion of cap space. Like, this is not complicated. So I think the easy move first, I think, is to try to get Vinny Desharnais waived and get him down to the AHL. Now, the Sharks would have to carry some cap space with that, because you can have you can bury $1.15 million of your cap space when you send a guy down to the AHL. Whatever's left over stays on your salary, your NHL salary cap. And the good thing is, like, the Sharks don't have to worry about cap space, right? You have a nice cushion away from the floor, and you have plenty of space to the ceiling, especially after the Carey Price trade. Like, that was why they did the Carey Price trade, because you don't have to kind of worry about hitting that floor, and especially if the Sharks trade off pieces sooner or later. So Vinny Desharnais, I'm trying to waive and get down to the AHL. And if somebody claims Vinny Desharnais, okay, that's fine. One problem solved, as you're clearing. The Sharks still need to clear at least one contract before Misa and Dickinson play 10 NHL games. So there's going to be a trade if Misa and Dickinson are both in the NHL and expected to be in the NHL all season long. There's going to have to be a trade at some point where one of these NHL contracts is going to get traded. Who is it? Plenty of options, but Vinny Desharnais is the guy I think you can clear waivers. Like, I think he can go through waivers and he can go play in the AHL, where he can kind of help some of these young defensemen, right? And the Sharks don't really have a lot of veteran AHL defensemen on there. Like, you have Lucas Carlson and Cole Clayton are like your veteran guys. Everybody else is, like Havlin's in his first year. Canyoni's going to be in his second year. Furlong's in his second year. You've got not a lot of veterans down there. So I wouldn't be surprised if trying to get a guy like Vinny Desharnais down there makes sense. You can also potentially waive the same thing with Jack Thompson. Now, Thompson, though, is on a much, we talked about the other day, $800,000 contract, also younger and a right-handed defenseman. So there's that potential somebody might try to snag him, right? And maybe he clears, maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But that would be a tough decision. And I would much rather lose a guy like Vinny Desharnais, who's, again, a perfectly cromulent 6th or 7th defenseman, over a guy like Jack Thompson, who still kind of scratching the surface of who he could be, right? So I think that's some decisions you're gonna have to make there to try to kind of get a veteran down there, right? We see Luka Madulin, like if Luka Madulin went on waiver, somebody's 100% grabbing him because he's a good player. I think you have to make, realistically, I think you have to make a decision on Ferraro and Liljegren, because again, both these players are in the last year of their deals, and I think on a good team, both these guys are probably like 4th or 5th defenseman, right? And we've talked ad nauseum about Ferraro, on this the life of this podcast, of how Ferraro has been a guy who the Sharks have unfortunately had to kind of push up the depth chart because they just don't have enough guys around him, right? And whether that ruined his development or whatever, I'm not here for that conversation today. It's Mario Ferraro is who Mario Ferraro is at this point, right? And if he would have gotten better or worse, who knows, right? But I do think you need to make a decision on a guy like Ferraro or a guy like Timothy Liljegren and what their future is in San Jose long term. And if you feel like one or both or neither is going to be in San Jose, I think it would behoove you to make that move sooner rather than later, right? And I'm just going to pick on Ferraro here, for example. But both these players are kind of in the same boat, especially with the new rules where you can, you can only, well, I guess it wouldn't really matter because the Sharks hopefully would not be retaining, because I'm saving that retention slot for Alex Wennberg, spoiler. But if you wanted to move a player like a Ferraro or a Liljegren, doing it early in the season to give a new team some flexibility, where if they wanted to try to pull off a, kind of trading while holding on to some, retaining, especially with the new 75-day rule now, it does make it a little bit tougher for some of these trades. So you do wonder if maybe teams like a team maybe who's not in contention right now would be interested in a guy like a Ferraro or a guy like Liljegren, who you might be able to move later on, and try to get retention, kind of deal with some of the retention stuff there. But and unfortunately for Cagnoni, who I love Cagnoni, I think they're gonna stay in the AHL. This blue line is yours right now because I think you're clearly the best defenseman. And then once John Klingberg gets traded, that'll be the Klingberg spot will just be handed to Luca Cagnoni, basically. So we'll know how Mike Grier feels about Sam Dickinson's chances to kind of not only make the roster but stick on the roster by how aggressive he is at moving some of these pieces, moving a piece or two out, to try to kind of clear up the space for a guy like Dickinson to play. But I'm still very much, I think the Sharks find a way, as weird as it's going to be to have potentially 4 20-year-olds or younger on the roster, right? Will Smith is 20. Dickinson and Celebrini are both 19, and Michael Misa is 18. For the future of the organization, just getting these guys playing together, I think for a team that we know is going to not be competing, getting through some of these rookie bumps and bruises right now, and what I think is a better roster than what we have last year, and especially on the blue line, I think the Sharks will be able to manage it and figure it out. So that's my opinion. I think Sam Dickinson sticks around. I think you'll see some movement from a guy like Vinny Desharnais. Maybe a team wants a guy like Vinny Desharnais for their 7th defenseman. And then I think making a decision between guys like Ferraro and Liljegren and kind of what you want to do there. I think that's kind of your path to getting Dickinson if Dickinson in and playing every night. So we'll be back for tomorrow's episode where we'll get you guys ready for the rookie face-off. So we'll go through kind of the roster, get you guys kind of up to speed on that, what to kind of take away from this, what not to get overexcited about. So plenty of fun stuff. And then we'll have some reactions this weekend from what happens, because we're going to have actual hockey on Friday night for the first time in forever. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and on TikTok at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until tomorrow. Bye, friends.